Your ankles are swelling, and your mind probably jumped straight to your heart. Here's the truth. In most people over 60, that's not what's actually happening. Yeah, sit with that for a second. Because if you've been quietly panicking every time you take your socks off and see those deep red lines pressed into your skin, I need you to hear this before you spiral into worst-case thinking. Swelling in your ankles and lower legs is one of the most common things people notice after 60. And it is almost never the dramatic emergency your brain wants to turn it into. There is a real, physical, fixable reason this happens, and by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what's going on in your body, and you're going to have a 5-minute routine you can start using today to help drain that fluid out. I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to actually explain this properly, because I don't think anyone ever has, so let's get into it. The myth. Here's the standard advice you've probably heard 100 times. Swollen ankles mean heart problems. Go get it checked. And look, that advice isn't wrong to say out loud, because yes, there are heart-related causes of swelling, and I'll talk about when that's actually the concern later in this video. But here's what nobody tells you. For the overwhelming majority of people over 60 who notice puffy ankles at the end of the day, the cause has almost nothing to do with how well your heart is pumping. It has to do with something much simpler, much more mechanical, and honestly, much easier to fix. Think about how this usually plays out for people. You wake up, ankles look normal. You go about your day, sitting for meals, sitting in the car, sitting to watch television, maybe standing at the counter for a bit. By 6 or 7 in the evening, you take off your socks and there they are. Those deep pressure lines. That slightly tight, heavy feeling around your ankle bone. Your first thought is almost always the scariest one available. Is this my heart? Is this fluid backing up because my heart can't keep up anymore? That thought alone is enough to ruin an evening, and it happens to people over and over again, week after week, because nobody ever explained the actual mechanics of what's going on down there. Here's the part that should genuinely change how you feel about this. Your ankles swelling by evening and going back down somewhat by morning is actually a pattern. It's not random, and it's not a sign your organs are failing one by one. It follows gravity. It follows how much you moved that day, and it follows a very specific, very fixable mechanism that has almost nothing to do with your heart's pumping strength. The real reason is something most people have never even heard explained. It's not about your heart being weak. It's about a pump you didn't even know you had, and that pump has slowed down. Let me explain what's actually going on inside your legs. The real reason. Your heart's job is to push blood down and out to your entire body. That part works fine for most people, even later in life. The harder job, the one nobody talks about, is getting that blood, along with extra fluid, back up from your feet and ankles, against gravity, all the way back to your heart. That's a tough climb. Blood has to travel uphill through your veins, and along the way, your body relies on 2 things to help push it back up: one-way valves inside your veins, and something called the calf muscle pump. Think of your calf muscles like a second heart sitting in your lower leg. Every time you take a step, every time you flex your ankle, your calf muscle squeezes the veins around it like a fist squeezing a tube of toothpaste, and that squeeze pushes blood upward. Then those tiny one-way valves I mentioned snap shut behind it, so the blood can't slide back down. Step after step, squeeze after squeeze, that's how fluid gets moved back up and out of your legs. Here's the problem. As we get older, and especially if we're sitting more than we used to, whether that's in a recliner, at a desk, or just resting more through the day, that calf pump barely gets used. It's like a muscle you forgot how to flex. And when it stops working efficiently, fluid has nowhere to go. It just sits there, in the tissue around your ankles, and pools. That's the swelling you're seeing, not a heart failing to pump. A pump in your legs that's gone quiet from disuse. And here's the part that surprises almost everyone. Those valves I mentioned can also loosen slightly with age, a condition sometimes called venous insufficiency. That sounds scary, but really, it just means the one-way doors in your veins aren't sealing as tightly as they used to, so a little fluid drifts back down between steps. Combine a lazy calf pump with slightly looser valves, and by the end of the day, gravity wins, and your ankles puff up. Now hang on, because here's a detail that changes how you should think about this completely. Long periods of sitting are almost as bad for this as standing all day. If you've been telling yourself, I don't stand much, so this shouldn't be happening to me, that's actually part of the problem, not a reason it shouldn't be happening. There's another layer to this that almost nobody mentions, and it's worth understanding because it explains why the swelling seems to sneak up gradually rather than all at once. Alongside your veins, you've also got a whole separate drainage network called the lymphatic system. Think of it as the cleanup crew, running quietly underneath everything else. It's constantly collecting extra fluid, proteins, and waste products from your tissue and slowly funneling them back into your bloodstream. Like the veins, this system also relies heavily on muscle movement to keep things flowing, because it doesn't have its own strong central pump the way your heart does for blood. When you move less, that cleanup crew slows down too, and a bit more fluid than usual just sits in the tissue around your ankles instead of getting cleared out. So really, you've got two systems, the venous system and the lymphatic system, both quietly depending on the same thing to function well: regular movement of your calf muscles. Here's something else worth knowing, because it explains why this seems to get more noticeable, specifically after 60 rather than at 45. As we age, the tissue under our skin naturally loses a bit of its elasticity, the same way skin does. Less elastic tissue means it resists a small amount of extra fluid less effectively, so fluid that a younger body might absorb and redistribute without you ever noticing, becomes visible sooner in an older body. It's not that your body is suddenly malfunctioning at 60. It's that a lifetime normal process, fluid pooling slightly when you sit still for hours, becomes a little more visible because the tissue around it has changed texture over the decades. That's aging tissue, not a failing heart. Let's keep going, because I want you to actually picture this happening in real time. Imagine your leg from the knee down as a plumbing system. The veins are the pipes carrying fluid back up toward the heart. The calf muscle is the pump station squeezing that pipe every time you move. The valves are little trapdoors, making sure nothing flows backward. Now imagine you sit still for 3, 4, 5 hours. The pump station goes idle. Fluid backs up in the lowest part of the pipes, your ankles, because there's nothing actively pushing it back uphill. That's it. That's the whole mechanism. No mystery, no scary hidden disease in most cases. Just a system that needs to be switched back on. Dr. Everett Cole, who spent years working with older adults on exactly this kind of circulation issue, explains it in a way I really like. He says the leg is designed to be a moving pump, not a sitting reservoir. The moment we stop moving regularly, we're asking the leg to function like something it was never built to be. Now here's something worth sitting with for a second. If that idle pump is really the core issue for most people, that also means most people have way more control over this than they think. This isn't your body betraying you. It's a system waiting for you to switch it back on. All right, if you've followed everything so far, the next part is where this actually becomes useful to you, because understanding why this happens is only half the picture. The other half is what you actually do about it, and that's coming up right now. Turning point. Before we get into the actual routine, I want to ask you to do 2 quick things, because honestly, they help more than people realize. If this explanation is making sense and you're the kind of person who wants real, no-fluff information like this, hit that like button. It tells me you want more of this kind of breakdown instead of vague advice. And subscribe if you haven't, because we cover one root cause explanation like this every single week, and you don't want to miss the next one. Also, drop a comment and tell me, does your swelling get worse by the end of the day, or is it there right when you wake up? I actually read these, and it helps me know what to cover next, because those 2 patterns usually point to slightly different causes. Okay, let's get into what actually helps. I'm going to walk you through a 5-minute routine, but before that, understand the goal of everything we're about to do. We are trying to wake that calf pump back up and give gravity some help. That's it. Every single step below exists to do one of those 2 things. Step 1, ankle pumps. This is simple, and you can do it sitting in a chair right now, even in front of the TV. Point your toes forward, hold for 2 seconds, then pull your toes back up toward your shins, hold for 2 seconds. Do this for about 1 minute, roughly 20 to 30 pumps. Here's why this works. Every pump flexes the calf muscle, and every flex squeezes those veins exactly the way walking does, pushing fluid upward. You're essentially manually restarting that pump without even standing up. A lot of people like to pair this one with something they're already doing, reading, watching a show, talking on the phone, because it doesn't require your full attention, just consistency. Step 2, calf raises. Stand near a wall or the back of a sturdy chair for balance. Slowly rise up onto your toes. Hold for a second, then lower back down. Do about 15 of these. This is a slightly stronger version of the same idea. A bigger squeeze, more fluid moved. Dr. Everett Cole often tells people this one single movement, done consistently, does more for ankle swelling than almost anything else on this list, simply because it directly targets the exact muscle responsible for pushing fluid back up. And here's a detail worth knowing. You don't need to rush this. A slow, controlled rise and a slow, controlled lower actually work the calf muscle harder than a quick, bouncy version, so there's no benefit to speeding through it. Step 3, leg elevation. This one's almost too simple, and that's exactly why people skip it. Lie down and prop your feet up on a couple of pillows, ideally so your ankles sit above the level of your heart, for about 10 to 15 minutes. Here's the reasoning. Elevation uses gravity in your favor instead of against you. All day, gravity has been pulling fluid down into your ankles. For those 15 minutes, you're letting gravity pull it back the other way, straight toward your heart, where your body can process it and get rid of the extra fluid naturally. A good time to slot this in is right after lunch or right before dinner, so it becomes a habit attached to something you already do daily, rather than one more thing to remember on its own. Step 4. A short walk. Even 5 to 10 minutes of walking, ideally broken into 2 short walks rather than one long sit and then walk, keeps that calf pump firing continuously instead of switching on and off. One general pattern that's shown up in circulation research is that people who break up long sitting periods with short walks tend to report noticeably less end-of-day ankle puffiness compared to people who sit for hours and then try to fix it with one long walk at the end. Little and often beats a lot, all at once. If you've got stairs in your home, even walking up and down a flight once or twice mid-afternoon does more for that calf pump than you'd expect, because the incline forces a slightly deeper muscle contraction than flat walking. Step 5. And this one surprises people. Watch your salt, not your water. A lot of folks think drinking less water helps swelling, but it's usually the opposite. When you're mildly dehydrated, your body actually tends to hold onto fluid more stubbornly, almost like it's bracing for a shortage. Meanwhile, excess sodium pulls extra water into your tissue, including around your ankles. So the actual fix isn't cutting water, it's staying well hydrated, aiming for consistent sips through the day rather than a lot at once, while being a little more mindful of heavily processed high-sodium foods, especially later in the day, since that sodium takes several hours to work its way back out through your kidneys, and a salty dinner can absolutely show up as puffier ankles the next morning. And a quick bonus you can layer on top of all this if you want. Well-fitted compression socks, the light, over-the-counter kind, worn during the day when you know you'll be sitting for long stretches. They work on the exact same principle as the calf raises, just passively, say gentle, even pressure that helps stop fluid from pooling in the first place. They're not required to see improvement, but a lot of people find them a helpful extra layer, especially on travel days or days they know they won't be moving much. Real-life examples. Now here's a real thing that happened, because I think it makes this land better than just listing steps. A viewer named Harold, 68 years old, wrote in a while back saying he'd basically accepted that puffy ankles by dinner time were just part of getting older. He wasn't in pain, nothing was red or hot, just that familiar sock line and heaviness. He started doing the ankle pumps and calf raises during commercial breaks. No gym, no special equipment, just a few minutes here and there, plus 15 minutes of elevation after lunch. He said within about a week and a half, his ankles looked noticeably less puffy by evening, and his shoes stopped feeling tight by dinner. Nothing dramatic, no miracle, just a pump that had been sitting idle, finally getting turned back on. There's another pattern I hear about a lot, and it's worth mentioning because it might sound familiar. A viewer named Marlene, 71, told us she'd actually bought compression socks years earlier on a doctor's suggestion, wore them for about a week, didn't see instant results, and put them in a drawer and forgot about them. What she'd been missing wasn't the socks themselves. It was pairing them with the calf pump doing some of the work, too. Once she added in the ankle pumps during her morning coffee and the short walk after dinner, along with wearing the socks she already owned, she said the difference showed up within days, not weeks. Nothing new to buy, nothing complicated, just finally understanding why each piece mattered instead of doing one thing in isolation and expecting it to carry the whole job. Now, I do want to be honest and responsible with you here, because that's important to me. Everything I've described is the common, mechanical, age-related pattern that explains most everyday ankle swelling. But swelling can occasionally be a sign of something that does need medical attention, and I'd rather you know the difference than worry unnecessarily, or worse, ignore something important. If the swelling comes on suddenly, is only in one leg, is painful, feels warm, or looks red, or if it's paired with shortness of breath or chest discomfort, please don't try to handle that with a home routine. Get that checked by a doctor promptly. That combination of symptoms is different from the slow, gradual, both ankles pattern most people deal with, and it deserves a real medical look, not a YouTube routine. Please take that seriously, but don't let it scare you away from doing the simple stuff. Most people watching this fall into the everyday category, not that one. So let's bring this back to where we started. Remember that first line, that for most people over 60, swollen ankles aren't actually your heart failing you? Now you know why that's true. It's not a scary organ giving out. It's a hard-working little pump in your calf that's been sitting idle, and a set of one-way valves that just need a bit of help. If you'd known this 5 years ago or 10 years ago, You probably wouldn't have spent a single evening quietly worrying about your ankles or feeling like this was just something you had to accept as getting old. You would have just done the pumps, propped up your feet, and gotten on with your evening. I want you to walk away from this feeling a little lighter than when you clicked on it. Your body isn't broken. It's just asking for a few minutes of attention it hasn't been getting. Give it that, and give yourself some credit for showing up and actually learning how your own body works today. That's not nothing. And here's one more thing worth remembering the next time you catch yourself worrying. Your body has been sending you information this whole time, a little tightness by evening, a sock line that fades by morning, and instead of it meaning something's failing, it's actually your body telling you exactly what it needs. Less sitting, more small movement, a little more attention to salt. That's a body that's still communicating clearly with you, not one that's breaking down. There's something genuinely reassuring in that, once you actually understand what the signal means instead of just fearing it. So tonight or tomorrow morning, pick just one of these 5 steps and start there. You don't need to overhaul your whole day. Pick the ankle pumps if you're someone who sits a lot. Pick the short walk if you're someone who's been putting off moving. Small, consistent, and boring beats dramatic and short-lived every single time when it comes to something like this. If this helped you, do me a favor and subscribe, because next week we're breaking down another one of those everyone just accepts this as normal aging things. This time about why your hands feel stiffer in the morning and what's actually behind that. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.